Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of AgricTech Founders Diary, a platform where we interview amazing agritech startups who are doing amazing stuff across the globe. Today is not different. We're having another amazing personality joining us all the way from New Zealand. She's not that person than Irina, who is the co-founder and CEO of Daisylab. Irina has built something really amazing that you need to pay attention to Irina's story, to his entire journey into the agriculture agritech space. She's currently running an amazing company called Daisylab, which focus on fermentation and that produce dairy. So stay ensure you stay hooked to the end of the interview today, as Irina will be sharing a journey, a story, and an entire experience in the agricultural technological space with us today. So without further ado, let's welcome Irina. So first of all, Irina, we'd love to meet with you. Tell us everything about yourself, where you started from, and what your company is into.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Um, yes, interesting. The Daisy Lab kind of exists in the intersection of, I guess, agri-tech, biotech, and food tech, because we're not your traditional agri-tech company that is directly innovating in the space of agriculture. We are making dairy identical proteins, so proteins that normally you would get from cow's milk. We're making those proteins without any cows, using yeast, some carbon source like sugary source, and the process of fermentation. I first came up with this idea when I worked for the dairy industry myself. And I was somewhat overwhelmed by the scale of it. So, for the first time, I really realized just how big our reliance on animal agriculture is, in New Zealand in particular, but also globally. And considering that we're sort of reaching the planetary bounds and we can't really increase, at least not in traditional ways, we can't really increase, definitely not in New Zealand. We have way too many cows. We have more cows than people. So New Zealand is incredibly um, very reliant on dairy and our dairy exports. We are globally the largest dairy exporter. So we most of our milk goes to export. And that reliance on animal agriculture was quite sobering and overwhelming. And I thought that if we want to continue to produce food, and particularly proteins, we need to find another way of doing it. My background is not really in science, so I'm not a food scientist or a biotech scientist. I did my master's in bioinformatics, but that's probably the closest that I came to biotech. So I never really had any hands-on experience before founding Daisylab. But I met my scientific co-founder, Dr. Nikki Fried, and we started talking and we made a plan. And essentially, Daisylab started more as a social project, really. We just wanted to get some research off the ground here in New Zealand. By the time we started, similar research has been already sort of initiated in the US, mostly in Silicon Valley. But we wanted to bring it to New Zealand to show our farmers that this is reality, that this can be done, that proteins can be produced without cows, and that it can be done in the very near future. So that's really how Daisylab started. We both had full-time jobs. We treated it as a project, a very interesting project. a very sort of purpose and passion driven project, but we weren't really fully in it. And then it's only after a couple of years when we've seen some success and we had some investors reach out to us, is when we decided that we will run it as a proper startup.
Amazing. So that's amazing story. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Um, my next question, for you is, we I want to know, or my audience would love to know, what drew you specifically to precision fermentation, and what do you think it's the what potentials do you see in shaping the dairy industry?
Right. So if I heard your first question correctly, what led to precision fermentation? Is that what you
Yeah,
asked?
I said, what drew
Yeah.
you specifically to
Mm-hmm.
precision fermentation?
Mm-hmm. So the first time, yeah, sorry. Yeah,
No, go
and
ahead.
then you'd ask about potential. So the first time I thought about producing dairy proteins with precision fermentation was when I connected the dots. So in the past, I used to be a hobby cheesemaker. So I would make cheese at home. And if any one of your listeners has ever made cheese, there's a very common enzyme that is used in cheese making, and it's called rennet or chymosin. It's used to coagulate the milk and to produce that bouncy, stretchy curd. So that enzyme, previously in the olden days, so sort of, half a century ago, used to be harvested from animals, specifically from it's a lining of newborn cows' stomachs that is just kind of ground up and dried. I have been primarily vegetarian my entire life. So when I learned about this enzyme and that it goes into just about every cheese, I was really surprised and really, well, I guess frustrated, because I was like, so what do you mean? So even the cheese that I eat is not vegetarian. But then I learned that actually from about 1980s, that natural source of that enzyme was replaced by what is now called a microbial rennet. So it's an enzyme that is produced using yeast. So it's essentially the same molecular structure as the original enzyme, the one that comes from cows, but you don't need to harvest it from the cows anymore, because you or scientists some decades ago have introduced this gene into a microbial host. So it's now made either using bacteria or yeast. And then they just use fermentation. So essentially put this microbial host into a sugary water, and the microbe eats up the sugars. And instead of, say, producing alcohol like it would be in the beer or wine industry, it produces this enzyme. So that gave me a lot of comfort in my cheese making days, thinking that, okay, great, my cheese is still vegetarian. I still can, because the ingredient comes from yeast or bacteria rather than from cows.
Mm,
But
amazing.
when I thought about the bulk dairy proteins, which is what New Zealand industry is doing, so only 4% of the milk that we collect here in New Zealand is sold as liquid milk. Most of the milk that we collect is processed either into milk powders, or it's actually split into a number of ingredients like protein powders. So we make a lot of whey protein powder, casein protein powder, and then other powders like lactose, and also, which is not powder, like amalgamated milk fat, which is a fat fraction of the milk.
Yeah.
So when you look at this business model, when you split milk into a number of different molecules, you start asking yourself a question: is why can't we just make the molecules and cut to the chase? Why do we need to be raising that many animals that occupy a lot of land? All of our animal agriculture is pasture based, or at least dairy is pasture based. So why do we need to be doing this, putting that much strain on our land and that much strain on our animals, when there is another way of producing the same ingredient? And that's where I connected the dots.
Okay. That's fantastic. But let me ask you, what have been some of the biggest challenges you face in developing dairy identical poultry through precision fermentation?
hmm
What
Well,
have
I
been your
guess the
biggest
challenge,
challenges that you face in
yeah,
developing dairy? Yeah.
yeah. I guess the challenges are similar in any startup and any industry. There are technical challenges that are obviously exciting. They are frustrating sometimes, but what we're saying is, well, if that was easy, everyone would be doing it, or it would have been done already. So the challenge, the technical challenges are the reason why we exist, right? We are here to solve them, um, and they come up all the time. Um, from designing the strains that produce the protein to optimizing the strains in the fermenter, equipment breaking, experiments not going the way you were planning for them to go, because it is science and it is nature and it's unpredictable. So all of that is kind of a part of life. We tackle it because we know that this is exactly why we're here, is to solve those challenges. There are also challenges around funding, absolutely. So that's probably one of the
Yeah. I
biggest
guess
challenges.
I was expecting that.
Yeah, particularly these days. So the funding into specifically alternative proteins have dropped quite substantially. We think that that was potentially because the market was somewhat oversaturated previously, and then and now investors are kind of turning away from alternative proteins. We believe that that's temporary, that is going to correct itself eventually. But yes, surviving until that time is obviously a challenge. We have to be incredibly lean, incredibly pragmatic, very focused on what we choose to do and what we choose not to do. Yeah, so that's definitely a big challenge.
So
There
so let me
are,
ask you,
yeah. Mhm.
um, you mentioned funding challenges. Have you raised any fund here for Daisylab?
Yeah, we raised some funds from, yeah, we raised funds from private investors through equity, and we also had some grants, so non-equity grants.
Okay. Okay. So I wanted to ask you, my next question was, how did you navigate your financial challenges in terms of funding? Have you been able to navigate that challenges of fund? Because a lot of startups kind of have challenges when it comes to funding. So have you been able to navigate that space of funding?
I don't think I'm going to offer you a silver bullet or a magical solution. I really don't know. If I did, I'd probably, have the
I
funding.
understand that. Yeah.
So it really all comes to refining your unit economics, engaging with as many investors as possible. Um, yeah, being very proactive in looking for it, and then just being prepared for disappointments, because it is very, very challenging these days. So this is where non-equity and kind of government support comes in very handy, because I think globally, VC investments now are more challenging than in previous time, because in most places in the world, the interest rates are very high, And whenever you have high interests in the bank, VC ecosystem always suffers because people prefer to just use more predictable and secure vehicles for the funding, and venture capital is not that. But again, everything kind of develops in cycles, so that will eventually change, and it's just a matter of surviving until those times.
Okay, good. How do you see the future of animal-free dairy, and what role do you hope Daisylab will play in it?
That's a very good question. I need to say to your listeners and to you that I am very biased when it comes to assessing the future of animal agriculture and animal free dairy. I myself, some years ago, almost 10 years ago, made a choice not to consume any animal products. And it is more of a health and ethical choice for me. But being a realist, I think, at least in the nearest future, at least in the next sort of couple of decades, absolutely animal agriculture will exist and coexist with alternative proteins. And maybe that will continue forever. Maybe as a planet, we will kind of divert away or reduce our reliance on animal agriculture. I think we will reduce our reliance on animal agriculture one way or another. So I think that we will have to, just again, due to planetary bounds and planetary restrictions, just by how much we will reduce it. I don't know. I'd like to think that by a lot, or we will eventually eliminate it entirely. But maybe not. Maybe we will reduce it to the point where our planet can cope, and it will continue coexist with alternative proteins. I
Okay,
Yeah, that's
but
right.
let me ask, what has been your experience been like as a female founder in the agri-tech and food innovation space? What have been like your experience as a female founder in this space?
Um, I honestly have to say that probably more positive than negative.
That's good.
Um, yeah, I at least in New Zealand, we at the very least people are quite neutral to. So yeah, it doesn't really feel like there is any challenges related to us being
Female founder.
we are fully, so we've got three co-founders and all three are females. So it's definitely not a barrier, and
Okay.
in some instances it can even be helpful because there are some investors that specific, at least at the point of pipeline and streamlining investments, look closely at female founders and female founded businesses. Whether that always helps to secure investment, I would say probably not. Um, Sometimes what we're noticing is the way um, men, men and women tend to pitch differently. And I think when some investors make decisions around funding, they subconsciously lean towards the male style of pitching.
Mm,
But it is quite subtle. So I would not say that we've experienced it in a very sort of obvious way. But
okay.
it definitely often helps initial engagement because people are quite willingly um, looking into female founded businesses.
I get that. That's fantastic. Okay. How do you balance running a science driven company while keeping business goal and customer adoption in focus?
Well, this is going to be a very simple answer. We are pre-revenue, so we're not generating any revenue. So there's very little balancing that we need to do just yet.
Okay.
But there's obviously always a conflict between wanting to do a deeper dive, a deeper science, better science, spending more time on science versus going faster to commercialization, moving faster towards a scale up. So that's definitely, that conflict is definitely very real. I think it really helps that we've got a scientist like Nikki and myself, a non-scientist, in the co-founding team, because it creates a very healthy debate and a very healthy sort of tension. And it does kind of allow us to see both sides and have both sides represented.
Wow. I think that's good. It's amazing to hear your story and how far you've built with your team members. But as we begin to wrap up, I just have like four more questions to ask you. The first one is, looking back, what's one mistake you've made earlier and earlier on that taught you a valuable lesson?
Mm. I think the biggest mistake that I really, or the only thing I really regret is not starting earlier,
Mm,
because I saw the opportunity probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years before I started. I
yeah.
just thought that it was so obvious that someone is either already doing it or will do it much better than I would. And I was convinced of that, and that's why I was, as they say, I was sitting on my hands, just waiting for it to happen. Um, Not realizing that people who may be in the dairy industry and may be better positioned to start a venture like this also have potentially more to lose, or um, also for some reason, look,
Mm.
I don't know what the reasons are, is why it wasn't started before. That still baffles me. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest regret I have, if any.
Wow. Wow. What advice would you give to an aspiring agri-tech entrepreneur looking to break into the space?
Just go for it. That is the only piece of advice. Like, if you really feel the fire in your belly and you really feel that you can contribute and that your idea is valuable and um, it will deliver value, whatever that means for you, because you do need this passion to drive it.
Mm,
Um, just thinking about financial reward at the end, I don't think, I've never met a founder who would be driven and focused and stayed committed to the business for as long as you need to stay committed, just on the promise of financial reward. There's always something incredibly personal, incredibly value driven, to always feed that passion. And if you feel it, you're a great founder, so go for it.
yeah, that's good. That's good. So guys, I hope you heard that one. Go for it. Just take that leap of faith, that leap of boldness, and go for it. Irene, let me ask, if you could change one thing about the global food system today, what would it be?
If I could change the food system,
Yes, if you could change one thing about the global food system today, what will it
it
be?
would, yeah, if I had a magic wand
Yeah.
and I could change one thing, it would be a very big thing, and I would remove animals from our food system. But yeah, that is something that would require a magic wand. I don't think that's possible today.
Okay, great. Um, a lot of times people kind of have different ways of defining success. As a female-led founder, how do you personally define success? Especially, how do you personally define success at this stage of your career and company journey?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question because it definitely changes all the time. And there is
Mm-hmm.
the personal success for me, which is probably where I started with this company. And now it's a company success. And it's very different to how I would define success. When we started Daisylab, I had this dream idea, and it was maybe quite silly, but I had a dream of going to our largest farmer AgricTech exhibition here in New Zealand. It happens every year, and bringing our technology there, either and then for like bringing a prototype product or just having a stand there and just talking to farmers about this technology and the fact that it's possible. And when we were starting, that dream really seemed absolutely unrealistic, like it seemed bizarre and crazy. And last year it happened. So last year we were part of the exhibition, and in fact we were nominated for an award. So there you go. Like my one of my definitions of success has already happened. Um, when it comes for the business today, going into the future, we now, of course, have private investors. I know that in addition to us driving the technology, lessening the burden on animal agriculture, supporting New Zealand dairy industry with the new technology that allows them to open up, to diversify their supply, but also to diversify their product offering, to potentially open up new markets. In addition to all of that, as a business, we also want to create returns for our shareholders. So I guess, yes, it changes all the time at different stages.
Oh, I completely agree with you that it changes at different stages, and everybody have a different way of defining success or what success means to them. But it's really good to hear what success means to you, and that's really a great one. But my last question for you will be, how do you define? My last question to you will be, what will be your last word, like your last advice as we wrap up this program? What will be your last advice to agritech startup, or let's say a science-based startup company like yours? What would be an advice to them?
Well, I guess it's probably going back to just be brave. If your idea, no matter how crazy your idea seems, and if you're convinced that it is possible, and everything in what you research and read supports your conviction, don't listen to others. Just go for it. Just do it. Because if your assessment is that it's possible, then it probably is.
Wow, that's amazing, guys. I hope you guys have gained a lot of value from today's episode of AgricTech Founders Diary. It's been a pleasure having you today, and then we look forward to having you again. Thank you for coming to our show. Thank you for coming to share your story and your journey with us today. And definitely, we're going to have you again.
Wonderful.
It's on this note we're going to bring the program to an end. Till see you next week again on AgricTech Founders Diary. Do it to subscribe. Do it to hit the notification button to get notified whenever we go live. And then if you're an agritech startup listening to this program, you want to get featured, do it to reach out to us so we can also get to share your story. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you
Wonderful.
next week.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
See ya.
Bye for now.
Bye.